Attendance was confirmed during roll call during the NVTA tax agency meeting with 3 absences of Alfredo Pedroza, Belia Ramos, and Jeff Ellsworth.
Thank you very much.
Belia Ramos just texted, she's on the attendees list.
Okay, thank you. We will ensure she gets, oh, there she is, moved over. Belia Ramos is in attendance, and I will place that in the notes.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that. Welcome, Director Ramos. Number 3 is adoption of the agenda. I will ask for a motion if there are no changes to the agenda.
Motion to adopt, Garcia.
Yeah. Thank you. For a second.
Second, Dorman. Second, Dorman.
Thank you, Dr. Dorman. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Cross,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Number 4 on our agenda today is public comment. Do we have any public comments for this agenda?
I believe we do. One moment. We have Patrick Band with a public comment.
Thank you.
Patrick, let me ensure that you are able to speak.
Great. Thank you very much. Patrick Band, Executive Director, Napa County Bicycle Coalition. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Wanted to address 2 items. One is a quick update on the Napa County Safe Routes to Schools. We're really excited. We just received some data from our research project with EMC Research, exploring parent perceptions around walking and biking. We're still digesting a lot of this information, and we'll present a full report to the NVTA team as well as local jurisdictions in the coming months. But really exciting data I wanted to share with you today. We surveyed with EMC Research 459 parents with kids in the K-8 public school system in Napa County. 73% of respondents say that they pre-COVID drove their kids to school on a regular basis, 16% walking and just 4% riding bikes. Yet 76% of parents want their kids to be able to walk or bike to school. There's a huge unmet demand for people who want to be able to walk or bike or have their kids walk and bike to school. And there's a lot of potential for shifting people out of cars onto bikes and pedestrian modes. 85% of parents who we surveyed said that they would be very comfortable with their kids walking to school with another adult. And 74% said that they'd be comfortable with their kids biking to school with an adult present. At the same time, the biggest concern that we heard from all of these parents was 96% of parents had concerns about speeding and distracted driving, which was the #1 reason why they would not let their children walk or bike to school. We also explored what the opportunities were that would allow parents or make them more comfortable letting their kids walk and bike to school. And what's most amazing is that these are really simple, easy things to do. 84% of parents said they'd be comfortable if there were more crossing guards. 81% said that if crosswalks were better lit or were more well-maintained, or if cars yielded to kids in the crosswalks. And 68% of parents said that they'd let their kids walk without an adult if there were organized groups of students walking and biking together. This really illustrates the opportunity that we have here in Napa County to get kids out of their parents' cars and walking and biking to school, which can have a huge reduction in congestion around our local schools during those pickup and drop-off times. And what's great is a lot of these treatments, a lot of these ways that we can get people out of cars and walking and biking are very, very affordable. So that's one thing I wanted to let you know about. The second is that we're really excited that next month is Bike Month throughout Napa County. I know a lot of our local agencies are doing proclamations in the next few weeks proclaiming May is Bike Month. I wanted to invite all the members of the NVTA board to go to our website at napabike.org and take our pledge to ride. We have a great raffle that's going on throughout the month of April and May, where anybody who takes our Pledge to Ride can be entered in to win really fun prizes, including gift cards to local bike shops, restaurants, as well as for those who have little kids in their lives, we have a $600 Burley tow-behind trailer that was donated to us, and we're raffling that off. So some really fun prizes. We really encourage all of our elected officials to take that pledge to ride their bikes at least once during the month of May. And again, we're happy to share more information. You guys, I think, all have our contact information. So looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
That's excellent. That's really, thank you for that report on the survey and the response. That's very helpful, and looking forward to next month. Are there any comments by the board on this, regarding what Patrick had to say, his report? Nope, great.
No comment on that, but I understand that Director Ellsworth needs to be promoted.
Thank you. Moving on, number 5, chairpersons, board members, Metropolitan Transportation Commissioner, and ABAG updates. Let's see here. Do we have any board members that would like to provide an update before we go to MTC or ABAG? Okay. Do we have, Alfredo provides the MTC update, but Director Miller, hey, do you have something you want to share on MTC?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Director Alicio. I appreciate it. So the first item is not a happy item. I don't know, many of you might have met Ann Halstead at some point in your public career. She was the commissioner who represented the Bay Conservation and BCDC, Bay Conservation and Development Corporation, on the commission. And Ann passed away on March 17th, so I wanted to share that with you. Also, MTC seated a new commissioner representing Sonoma County, Santa Rosa Vice Mayor Victoria Fleming. She was appointed on in April this month, and she replaced longtime Commissioner Jake McKenzie. The Blue Ribbon Task Force met on March 22nd. It will meet again on April 26th. The final version of the problem statement and discussion of the network management concepts were discussed. It was generally acknowledged that no public agency has sufficient resources to take on some of the responsibilities that a network management role would entail. So the problem has been broken down into 4 distinct areas: organization and institutional challenges, customer experience, past and current disparities, and transit costs and funding. MTC is hiring a consultant to reconcile and define a network management approach. And also, since the last meeting, Assembly Member David Chu introduced AB 629, which you will act on today. That bill in its current form requires improved coordination to identify major corridors for prioritization. It also requires the commission to implement an accumulator pass pilot program in at least 3 adjacent counties. It requires the commission to work with transit operators on a standardized regional transit map and wayfinding system. And it also requires the commission to partner with Caltrans to take steps to ensure the regional managed lanes network supports seamless transit operations. I also wanted to report that the Bay Area Infrastructure Financing Authority has kicked off efforts on a first of its kind pilot program to provide a means-based tolling approach for low-income residents in the Bay Area. And that effort is called Fast Track Start. So look for that. MTC also awarded a $1.2 million contract to GHD to complete the preliminary engineering, environmental documents, and final design on the State Route 29, Rutherford, Oakville, and Madison intersections. I also wanted to let you know that NVTA staff will be kicking off public outreach events, probably starting in June, July of this year, to get the information out about the proposed projects and to get public feedback. The Operations Committee adopted the Bay Area Express Lanes Strategic Plan, which links the Express Lanes network purpose, goals, and strategies to the regional strategic goals of the Plan Bay Area 2050 to help meet MTC's SB 375 greenhouse gas emission goals. Plan Bay Area includes a strategy to toll all Bay Area lanes. This strategic planning effort will identify strategies to align the defined network with the Plan Bay Area objectives to bring the vision for a regional express lane system to fruition. And that concludes the MTC report.
Thank you very much. That was very good. Do we have any questions on Kate's report?
Member Garcia's hand is raised.
Director Garcia.
I'm here to give the ABAG report.
Perfect. Okay, I think we're ready for that then.
Okay. Well, ABAG had some very meaningful discussions on, I think Mr. Band's concern with safety as all concerns all of us. Assembly Bill, this is from the ABAG Legislative Committee. Assembly Bill 43, it's Friedman. Vision 0 setting speed limits. So the gist of that is the local jurisdictions set speed limits to what they feel is safe, rather than having it done by the state agency. So we'll see that where that one progresses. This is the bill in the works. Next one is Assembly Bill 550, Chew. Vision 0 speed safety cameras. So this is another one that speaks to safety in the community by giving speed cameras availability. Posting those in areas where traffic seems to be an issue. And the one that we just spent a great deal of time with was the climate adaptation advocacy principles. This is a revised regional resiliency climate adaptation advisory principles. Looking at how we address the issues of regional planning process, equity, define appropriate roles of our local or regional state agencies, support engagement, and provide support for non-governmental agencies involved in climate adaptation. I do have some links here that the documents were provided for, so I would be happy to send that to other agencies as well. All jurisdictions, I would assume, are interested in doing it. If I send it to probably mayors, I would get it to everybody. Would that work? Hearing no objection. Okay. That concludes that report. So locally, last night at the American Canyon, we had a presentation on State Route 39, kind of getting a project initiation document started, and with some options presented on what to do with the traffic flow into American Canyon. I think I would reiterate again this time. Traffic is an issue for all of us in Napa County, from end to end on State Route 29. It affects us not only quality of life, that's one issue, but certainly it affects the economy from visitors and from the workforce coming and going. So it urges that all of us, get into a collaborative spirit of understanding what the impacts are in each respective jurisdiction and how we might accomplish solutions to that for all of us. So I'd like to be very much in touch with everyone about that. And I'm sure others on this board are likewise interested. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Director Garcia. Director Ramos, is there anything you want to add on the ABAG update?
I did. Thank you so much. Just some technical aspects. As a representative on the Finance Committee of ABAG, we approved the budget and we referred it over for the General Assembly. So those that serve on the General Assembly, we look forward to your support of it. Knowing that one of the things that we are going to have to look at some point is an increase in dues. We were able to push that off last year, but really to move forward in a more equitable manner of representation of our Council of Governments, it's very likely that we are going to have to increase dues, but we're going to look at some efficiencies that we can apply before that. Next, of interest to all of us is the RENA allocations. The RENA allocations, the draft form approved by ABAG Executive Board was referred to HCD, and we've gotten the green light from HCD. So it will be coming back to ABAG for finalization of the numbers as presented to HCD. So that information should be coming to your planning directors in pretty short order, but that was reported out last week as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Ramos. Are there any questions from the board? No? Okay. Thank you very much for your updates. We're going to go ahead and Kate, did you have a director's update that you wanted to add?
I do. Thank you very much, Director Alicia. NVTA staff participated in the State Route 37 Town Hall meeting hosted by Senators Dodd and McGuire on April 15th. There were roughly 200 participants. MTC, Caltrans, and Sonoma Marine Transportation Authorities provided a presentation on the interim and ultimate projects, as well as what has been completed to date in the corridor. Most of the public feedback asked about transit funding and bike access. I was also one of a handful of speakers invited to participate on the Federal Transit Administration and Federal Emergency Management Region 9 Vaccine Peer Exchange event. I learned that many counties prioritize public transit workers for vaccines, and in many instances use public transit headquarters to vaccinate members of the public. In most instances, regions recognize the work that transit systems were doing to provide services to some of the most vulnerable members of the population and prioritize transit workers for vaccines. And in California, even before the governor officially designated transit workers as a priority. Also, I wanted to note that after a failed effort and a lot of advocacy, we were able to get most Vine Transit drivers and workers vaccinated through other channels, thanks to Vice Chair Alicio, who stepped in and requested assistance from Providence. I would like to acknowledge her support and let her know how much TransDev and NVTA staff appreciated her efforts on our behalf.
Thank you.
And then finally, we have a new member of the NVTA family who arrived last Friday. The proud parents of Danielle and Peter Schmitz welcomed Nolan Ryan Schmitz into the world on April 16th at 9:48 a.m. And he weighed 7 pounds, 9 ounces. And I just wanted to offer congratulations to the Schmitz family. And that concludes my report.
It's a great way to conclude your report. Congratulations to them and VTA family. Thank you. We're going to start with that. We're going to move on to presentations. 7.1 is a proclamation of appreciation. And this is very exciting. We've got some special folks with us today. And Laura, do we bring them in as we do this presentation?
They are here. I don't see them on the screen just yet. Let's see.
Well, while we're doing that, I just wanted to, extend staff, NVTA staff's appreciation for the work that our drivers do. And these drivers have driven 1 million miles or more with no accidents. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we appreciate the efforts that they make. And Liz, Director Alicio, you're on.
Okay, well, normally this is something I would prefer to share, but doing this virtually, I guess I get to read the whole proclamation, but it's truly my honor to do this. I'll go ahead and begin. Proclamation, NVTA, a proclamation of Napa Valley Transportation Authority honoring TransDev million-miler drivers. Whereas the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, a joint powers agency, recognizes Vine Transit drivers and the critical services they provide 7 days a week, 365 days a year to Napa Valley's communities. And whereas these Vine Transit drivers are committed to community service that includes creating mobility for community members with no other access to transportation so that they can go to school, work, medical appointments, and buy food, and drive many long hours to provide express bus services to BART, Capitol Corridor, and the Vallejo Ferry for workers in the Central Bay Area, and provide evacuation services during firestorms and other emergencies, including providing services for community members quarantined during the pandemic of 2020-2021. And whereas Brian Wilkie, Beth Kadadu, hopefully I'm saying your name right, Takale, Kelsey Brown, Elaine Ordonez, Luz De Leon, Ficre Tessima, Hector Lopez, Brad Hansen, and Jorge Tapia have achieved million-miler status as they have driven 1 million miles without a preventable accident. And whereas they transported passengers safely over 10 plus years by always using the professional defensive driving techniques. And whereas their efforts to expect the unexpected and maintain focus have always gotten the residents of Napa County safely to their destination and earned them this special recognition. And whereas they are polite, kind, courteous under even the most stressful and difficult conditions. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on this day, 21st day of April 2020, that the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors hereby recognize and extend the utmost gratitude these vine drivers for their service and for never letting safety take a vacation. And be it further proclaimed on this 21st day of April 2021 that the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors and staff do hereby recognize and extend sincere congratulations for your exceptional years of leadership, public service, and commitment to Vine Transit. And this is signed by our NVTA Chair, Alfredo Pedrosa. So again, I want to congratulate all these exceptional drivers and members of NVTA. If we want to give them a little bit an applause, a quiet one, I guess.
Here, if everyone can see, the Million Milers are on the screen. Hello, Million Milers, if you can hold up your proclamation.
Let's see, I'm looking for them.
There they all are. Thank
there
you,
they
Million
are.
Milers.
Congratulations, everybody. I wish we could be there in person to thank you in person. I'm sure you have
Thank you all.
you have a lot of stories along the way in getting those million miles. So thank you so much for your service to our community.
Standing ovation if we could.
Yes. Indeed. Okay. Moving back to our agenda. We have item 8, which is consent agenda item. Is there a public comment on any of these consent items?
I see none.
Do any of our board of directors have any comments, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Joseph, to adopt.
Second, Kraus.
Thank you. Laura, will you provide roll call, please?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth, Carrie Dorman,
I to 8.2, 8.3, abstention on 8.1.
thank you,
Thank you.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to number 9, regular agenda items. On 9.1, it's the Amendment 6 to Napa Valley Transportation Authority Agreement, number NVTA 12-08 for the position of Executive Director. I recommend that the board to authorize a 5% pay increase effective January 1, 2020, and 5% pay increase effective January 1, 2021, and agreeing to pay the executive director an approximate salary of $230,085, looks like 14 cents annually. Is there any public comment on this item?
There is not.
And would any of the directors like to make any comments?
Canning, thank you very much for your continued efforts and great job. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.
Are there any others that I missed? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve?
So moved, Kraus.
Second, Dunbar.
Thank you. And Laura, would you provide roll call, please?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Director Ellsworth, if you press *6, you will unmute yourself.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Member Ellsworth. Carrie Dorman
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to 9-2. Napa Valley Transportation Authority fiscal year 2021 Q2 review and delegated authority matrix. And this is going to be a staff report. And it's informational only. Are we going to receive a presentation or is this?
Hi,
Yes.
Director Alicio. Yes, let me just get set up here. 1 second.
Thank you, Roxana.
All right. Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the board. My name is Roxana Marati, and I'm the Senior Financial Analyst here at NVTA. This item will be a review of the second quarter financial performance, and no action is being requested. Here you will see a summary of the actuals and budget and the variance and budget utilization of the cumulative Q1 and Q2 transactions. The CMA utilization rate is lower than anticipated because it includes large budgets for South School Junction and the Vine Trail projects. Major costs associated with these projects will likely be incurred after the end of the fiscal year. Revenues associated with these projects are on a reimbursement basis, which is also why the CMA utilization rate is lower in the revenues. If we take these projects out from the budget, the utilization rate is closer to 40%. By the end of the year, the utilization rate is anticipated to be higher and more aligned with the budget. Because NVTA operates in a biennial cycle, the full biennial budget will be expended by the second year. For capital, no capital expenses were incurred by the second quarter. However, by the end of the calendar year, these budgets will be expended for the purchase of zero-emission buses and the bus maintenance facility once the TIFIA loan is obtained. CMA revenue sources include ongoing planning grant revenues, Transportation Development Act revenues, One Bay Area grant revenues, other governmental sources, which includes local contributions and membership fees, and interfund transfers. And the CMA expenses include personnel, administration, and consulting. The main consulting expenses are related to the Emola Park and Ride, Emola corridor improvements, Vine Trail, and financial and legal advisors for the TIFIA loan. And here's the transit side. Transit revenue sources include TDA, farebox and community shuttle contributions, state transit assistance, regional measure 2, FTA CARES Act remaining funds, and intra-fund transfers. Transit expenses include the purchase transportation, fuel maintenance and insurance, administration, and personnel. Purchase transportation is a bit higher for Q2 due to some timing issues. We had a late start in the year, but we are on track at the mid-year mark, and the full fiscal year expenses will be normalized by the end of the year. And that is my report. Are there any questions?
Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
And do any of our board members have any questions or comments? I don't see any. Okay, then this is just, it's informational only, so we don't need to have any other action on this. We'll go ahead and move on to item 9.3. This is the First Amendment to Napa Valley Transportation Authority Agreement number 20-18 with Nossaman LLC for TIFIA Legal Services. Antonio, you're going to provide a presentation?
No presentation. I just will provide a report, Chairman. So good afternoon, Vice Chair Alicia and members of the board. My name is Antonio Honorado, and I am the Director of Finance here at NVTA. For item 9.3, staff is asking the board to authorize the Executive Director to execute and make minor modifications to the First Amendment of NVTA Agreement number 20-18 with Nossaman LLC for additional legal advisory services for securing a Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act loan, a TIFIA loan, and private sector financing for the construction of the new Vine Trail Maintenance Facility for a total amount not to exceed $75,000. NVTA's advisors, both KNN and Special Legal Counsel Nossaman, originally scoped their services on the bus maintenance facility was to assist NVTA on acquiring a TIFIA loan from the Build America Bureau after the initial due diligence period. As you know, in October of last year, the California Supreme Court decided to hear an appeal regarding the legalities of Regional Measure 3. Because of that, NVTA had to revise its funding plan and identify other funding sources since NVTA could no longer rely on RN3 funds to fill in the rest of the project's funding. Whereas NVTA amended the contract with KNN due to this change late last year, we decided to wait to revise the contract with Nossaman until we had a better understanding of the additional legal requirements imposed upon us from the Build America Bureau. I think we are far enough into the process to know the total legal cost involved. The additional legal scope includes negotiations with the Bank of Marin, not only for the $5 million loan, but also ensuring the renewal of the short-term line of credit that we have with the Bank of Marin does not conflict with the covenants of the TIFIA loan, nor the $5 million loan with the Bank of Marin once it's approved. With Nossaman's assistance, NVTA so far has had 4 levels of review for the $5 million loan, and we are still evaluating the line of credit terms in order to harmonize all 3 financial documents, the TIFIA loan, the $5 million loan, and the line of credit, all at the same time. Although the amendment is for an amount not to exceed $75,000, I don't anticipate costs reaching that level. However, I did wanted to put in a buffer in case new additional requirements were imposed by the Build America Bureau, which I've been told has happened with San Luis Obispo and Monterey Salinas Transit, both of which have received TIFIA loans. The additional cost has been accounted for in the total project cost for the Vine Maintenance Facility, and as such, we are not asking for a budget modification. In conclusion, the action requested before the board is to approve the First Amendment of NVTA Agreement 2018 with Nossaman LLC for legal services related to securing a TIFIA loan with the Build America Bureau for the Vine Maintenance Facility. That concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Antonio. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Do we have any questions or comments from our board? The board of directors? Rebecca, we lost Director Ellsworth. He's back on. Can you promote him?
Yes.
Director Doring.
Yeah, just a brief comment. I'm prepared to vote in approval of this item. The recommendation, actually, I just want to make sure we're all clear. The written recommendation says to make minor modifications to the First Amendment. There is no First Amendment, right? So we're making minor modifications to the original amendment.
Well,
the original agreement.
It's to approve the amendment and allow for minor modifications. So that is
okay.
That's a typo on the.
Okay,
amendment.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that we're amending the original agreement. Yeah. I actually will move approval of the item as recommended.
I'll second Joseph.
Thank you. Laura, will you provide roll call, please?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Delia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Moving on to 9.4, Vine Transit Update. Rebecca, you're going to be providing an update, and this is also informational only.
Correct. And I'll just be turning on a presentation here in just a moment. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Alessio and members of the board. My name is Rebecca Schenk. I am the transit or program manager for public transit, and I'll presenting an update on this third quarter of fiscal year 2021, and that covers the months January through March of this year, so almost up to date. And so we continue to do our emergency operations center work, and to support, one of the biggest things that we've been doing, say during this quarter, is 3 times a day, I should say, 7 days a week, we're doing deliveries specifically for the Salvation Army to residents throughout Napa County. So whether it's New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, etc., we're out there doing those deliveries. That's been taken a lot of effort from our drivers, and want to thank them for that work. Kind of just as a little reminder of where we are at in terms of service and the data that you're going to see today, kind of what we're comparing to are 2 things. So we're comparing to the third quarter from the prior fiscal year, 1920, so January to March of 2020, which was mostly pre-COVID. Our service changed on March 13th. We're comparing to the prior quarter in fiscal year 2021, so that being October through December, and then we're looking at the most current quarter, which is January through March of this fiscal year. And so overall, like I mentioned, comparing the 3 different time periods, the turquoise here represents where we are at in January through March last year. It's obviously significantly higher than anything that we're seeing right now. And then in gray, you'll see the last quarter, October through December. And then in orange, you'll see January through March. Something I kind of want to talk through is that people have responded, at least what we've seen on the transit side, to the tiered system. So for example, let's take the on-demand service within the city of Napa. So you'll just see a slight uptick between the 2 quarters, but really what's encompassed in the orange here is what it looked like in January. We did about 3,060 rides right during that month. And when we were in the purple phase, and then in February as well in the purple phase, we ticked up some to about 3,700 rides. Then if you remember in the first week of March, we went into the red tier and we really saw a jump in ridership then, and about 1,000 more rides that month to about 4,800 rides. And kind of what we're tracking for in April based upon the first 15 days, I would expect that we'd be in the 5,500 ride range for that month, which works out to about 230 rides per day. And so in each of these, in the routes 10 and 11, and in the routes 21 and 29, you'll see similar patterns where January and February were quite low in the purple phase. And then as we moved into the red phase, we saw a jump. And then if you look at the first few days of April, we also, it looks like transit riders responded to the orange phase. Total ridership changes on the shuttles, same periods. In each of the shuttles, you saw an increase in ridership from the second quarter to the third quarter. And again, they all showed that March jump in ridership. And then one of the measures that we kind of look at is the passengers per revenue hour, specifically on the weekdays. So, you know, we set these thresholds obviously prior to COVID. Kind of the minimum threshold that we would look at across for local service is about 8 passengers per revenue hour. We were well above that in 1920 during the third quarter, but remain well below that during the previous 2 quarters. And you'll see that pattern continues. And this is just specifically looking at the third quarter for our regional routes, the 10, the 11, the 21, and the 29. You'll see the 10 and 11 do keep kind of the best passenger per revenue hour. And that's really driven by the fact that we were able to operate in this period on a Saturday schedule. So basically from Monday through Saturday, we operated a more limited schedule than we would. And so that kept our revenue hours down more in conjunction with our drop in ridership. On the routes 21 and 29, we operated the same kind of pre-COVID and during COVID levels of service. So without decreasing that service, our passengers per revenue hour were quite low over that period. And then looking at the shuttles, again, below our threshold of the 4 passengers per revenue hour, probably the strongest performer being American Canyon Transit, as people continue to use the shuttle to meet some of their basic needs there. In American Canyons, we're averaging just over 3 passengers per revenue hour there. And that kind of concludes this report and works on what we've where we've been. And I will be doing kind of the next item on kind of where we're going. So if you have any questions about kind of the future of transit, maybe we can talk about them in item 9.5, but happy to answer any questions about the statistics from the prior quarter.
Vice Chair, you're on mute, but no, we don't have any public comment.
And any of our board members have any public comment? Any comments or questions? Saying none? Okay, well, very good. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for that update, for that report. Moving on to item 9.5. We have the amendment number 4 to purchase order 20-2013 for on-demand software to serve the city of Napa. And Rebecca, you're also providing a staff report on this.
Right. Thank you. So what I'm going to be kind of presenting on here is what the kind of the history and what we've been doing with on-demand in the city of Napa, and then talk through what we're planning to do in May with on-demand in the city of Napa as it relates to this board item. So just as a reminder, in the spring of 2020, right, we paused our fixed route operations in the city of Napa and transitioned resources to pretty much pure on-demand system using the Ride the Vine app. And in anticipation of increased activity and ridership in the city of Napa, NVTA hired Translock, which is the parent company of Double Map, who does the Ride the Vine app, to basically run a series of analysis on 9 months of data that we had of on-demand within the city of Napa, and then to kind of use those results to inform what we would do moving forward with possibly a combination of on-demand and fixed routes within the city of Napa as we transition out of COVID. So they did a series of things, but the things that stuck out was they did a series of heat maps on the concentrations of pickups, which are shown in blue, and drop-offs, which are shown in green in the city of Napa. So you'll see over that period, there were some major highlights in terms of, okay, people are often going to Kaiser and Bel Air Plaza here, both the pickups and drop-off side of things. We also see a concentration at the Walmart at Lincoln and Saskell, at the Saskell Gateway Transit Center, as people are transferring to the regional routes, be it the 10, 11, 21, 29, down here at the South Napa Marketplace, at the River Park Shopping Center, and then just slight hues of green and blue in the Westwood neighborhood and along where Rolf's Manor is, more on the west side of Napa. And so analyzing these pickup and drop-off patterns, we went ahead and came up with 3 alternatives in conjunction with Transloc of potential fixed routes that we could incorporate into the on-demand area. And I would emphasize that with all of these alternatives, what we're looking to do is still offer on-demand throughout the city of Napa, but along these heavily traveled routes, give people the option of taking fixed route as well. And so this is alternative one, right, going basically from the Redwood Park and Ride at the northern terminus down to the South Napa Century Center at the southern terminus. Kind of the pros, this being a one-seat ride right from north to south consistently. Cons being that you would need kind of multiple buses to run a 30-minute headways on this to be competitive with the on-demand, and then it doesn't serve some of the other areas that had been highlighted, including places like the River Park Shopping Center. So alternative two basically broke up alternative one, right, and had a northern route and a southern route, so to speak. So the pros would be there'd be one bus on each route, and that would be able to handle 30-minute headways given that distance. There's more destinations within a half mile of these stops. And then the cons being the potential for a two-seat ride. But really what we saw when we looked at the data is that, let's just take an example. There's a grocery outlet right here, basically a Trancas and Redwood, right? And there's also a grocery outlet in the River Park Shopping Center. So basically people that live, say, in the north aren't going to the grocery outlet, right, all the way to the south and hence taking two rides. They're going to the grocery outlet that is north, and the people in the south are going to the grocery outlet that is south. So we saw a few people making the move from all the way north to all the way south. And then the third option that was looked at was just also two-seat ride, north route staying the same, south route trying to incorporate some of the Westwood neighborhood and Harvest Middle School. But we found that especially with the southern route being too circuitous and it wasn't time competitive with on-demand, that people wouldn't make the decision to take the fixed route versus the on-demand. And so what they did is they kind of looked at the present conditions, right, which was where we were at in January. We were doing about 148 rides per day on demand. But I think, as I mentioned in the last report, that I think that in April so far, we've been doing about 230 rides per day. So just for some perspective there. And so in the present conditions, we would say would be doing all on demand, right? So there'd be nothing doing fixed route in either scenario. But alternative one, say if it existed today with this 148 rides, based upon where people were going and their times, they would estimate that 104 of them would take on demand and that 44 of them would take the baseline fixed route proposed in alternative one. And so in this case, in alternative two, slightly more people would take that baseline fixed route. And then in alternative three, the lowest number of people of the three alternatives would take the fixed route. And so what they did is kind of worked that out throughout the different growth scenarios as they saw the mid-growth being about 380 rides per day, and then future demand being closer to where we were at pre-COVID levels, more at 620 rides per day. And so they took this data and they went through a series of simulations using the software to say, okay, what would that look like in terms of an average trip time? What would that look like in terms of an average wait time? And then what would that look in the 95th percentile? So what's the worst case scenario, which is tends to be Thursday at 2 o'clock. I don't know what people do, but that's definitely our peak. So you'll see it's shaded in green represents shorter times and red represents longer, both wait times and total trip times. And so you can really get into the weeds here, but at the end of the day, what it's showing is that alternative two in the baseline, in the mid-growth, and in the future kind of would give us the shortest both ride times and wait times. And then depending on the number of vehicles that we operated, we could keep that wait time below that and trip time below that 30-minute threshold. And so, you know, how do these reports translate into reality of what's on the ground? So kind of as the result of analyzing our on-demand data, we're proposing for May of 2021 in terms of Vine service within the city of Napa, something like this. So like I mentioned, we would continue to have on-demand within the city of Napa, and people can continue to make that choice. But for people who kind of regularly make trips, for example, and who may not even have a smartphone, for example, and don't want to do the on-demand option, we would offer 2 fixed routes. So there'd be the route N, which would be north, looking very similar to alternative 2. You remember, however, alternative 2 went straight up Soskell, right over to Lincoln and up. And this is a slight variation because of the realities of the world. And then if you're traveling north here on Soskell and you're a bus, you can't service the Walmart stop, which is very close to the intersection at Lincoln and Soskell, get over the 2 lanes to then get in the left-hand turn lane on Lincoln. So in order to serve the Walmart, right, when you leave the transit center, you make kind of the right out of the transit center, go up Silverado Trail and hang a left on Lincoln so that you can serve the Walmart at this location here and then continue up. So it basically just allows us to serve the Walmart both in the north and the southbound direction. And then they would turn around the Redwood Park and Ride and come back. This is similar to a Route 8 that we've had previously and a Route C that have always been our most effective. So that seems fairly straightforward based upon both pre-COVID and COVID trips. And then in the south, again, very, very similar to the alternative 2, the difference again being if you're returning on your trip and you're going eastbound here, if you would continue from River Park, your next stop would not be until Kansas Avenue here. And so to better serve the Home Depot, the Target, the Rayleighs and things, we will come up and then we'll do Gasser and Hartel. And then we'll also be able to have a stop here very close to the South Napa shelter where we've been having a lot of service throughout COVID. And then we would continue north, and these would both operate on 30-minute headways. And as we made this change in May, it's also the opportunity kind of to review all of our service. So we return to a weekday schedule on both the routes 10 and 11. As I mentioned, we're currently operating on a Saturday schedule, and we would extend the hours on Friday and Saturday nights in Yountville and Calistoga by 2 additional hours in order to allow people to go to dinner there. We see that like the most popular hours in Yountville and Calistoga tend to be that last hour of operation around 7. So we'd like to extend that. We did look at St. Helena because I can imagine their members are kind of asking that question. And the St. Helena ridership, really what we've seen is dominated by school hours and school children. So for example, pre-COVID, we always operated 1 school shuttle in the AM and the PM. But what we found was our demand once St. Helena started to go in person full time again was enough that we couldn't maintain social distance with just 1 shuttle. So we are doing 2 loops in the morning now and 2 loops in the afternoon. So that's how we've kind of already increased service in the city of St. Helena to serve their needs. Just tends to be different types of ridership in the different jurisdictions. So we're just trying to adhere to that. And so kind of in conclusion, the action item, right, to kind of get back to that today would be to approve Amendment 4, which is purchase order 20-2013 for on-demand software to serve the city of Napa from April 28th of 2021, so just a few days from now, until June 30th of 2022, which would keep us on the fiscal year. And the cost of the Ride the Vine app specifically for the city of Napa over that period would be $33,963. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I see that we already have a question from Director Dunbar.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Rebecca, how are you factoring in the activity that's happening with the Napa Unified School District with the potential closure of Harvest or other school closures and consolidations? How does that impact the routes you were just describing?
Well, so it wouldn't impact, so putting this in place in May, I'm imagining this is an interim solution, right? That we are doing this from May till potentially August, depending on where our demand is. And then I'd be coming back to you kind of in the July timeframe to say, this is our plan to address schools reopening on if they indeed are opening in NVUSD on a full-time basis. So at this point in time, Harvest is still open and operational and will be for the rest of this school year. And they can be served by on-demand service as they have throughout this year to date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. And Director Dorman.
Thank you. And thank you for the report. Always interesting. Next. So you are expecting we would get some sort of a progress report in July. Is that
Yes.
what I took, part of what I took from your last answer? And what about cost versus revenue?
Sure.
I mean,
So no,
where do we
that'll-
net out if we're spending $34,000, but we are going to have to run this many buses, that many buses? How does all that work out?
Sure. So how it'll play out. So for right now, that's for up to 10 subscriptions. So as it stands now, right, that's how many subscriptions we're running currently on demand. With the North and South, in the beginning, we'd be running less than 10 subscriptions and looking more at 8 because we'd be doing 2 vehicles that would be doing the fixed route. So it would give us the option to either go back to, if let's say we have a extreme fourth wave and we want to go back to all on demand, we could have 10 subscriptions for the full year for the full amount through June 30th of 2020. If we're going on a track where, okay, we're going with 2 fixed routes now, but we are able to deal with COVID demand returns and we want to put maybe 4 fixed routes and bring our on-demand vehicles down to 4, we can do that within this. So this is saying we would pay per month, basically per subscription. And this would be the total amount that we would pay. And so if we would say use less subscriptions in a given month, we would pay less overall in terms of funding.
Okay, thank you. And so then how does that, because let's say we're going to use our 8 subscriptions, but then we're having to pay to run 2 routes we haven't been running, or have we been paying that somewhere else and we're going to move that money to run these 2 new repurposed routes?
Yes, so we had been running, say, 10 on-demand vehicles and subscriptions. And so that's, it's 10 drivers and 10 buses. So basically what we're doing is we're just reallocating. If you imagine that there's 10 vehicles and 10 buses, right? And they're all doing on-demand. I don't know if my face and my fingers fit in, but so now we're going to be running consistently 2 vehicles that are going to be doing fixed routes. So that'll leave me with 8 on demand. So I'm paying for the same driver and the same bus regardless, because I'm going to have 10 overall. And whether or not they run on demand versus fixed route, I mean, it can be slightly minor, right? Like someone could make a reservation at 5:28 and they're going a long distance and they run a little bit later than 5:30, but my fixed route ended exactly at 5:30. So there'll be minor variations. But basically, I'm paying for the same amount of vehicles and buses in both scenarios.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Dorman. And Director Canning, you have a question?
Yes, thank you for this and thanks for the effort on this endeavor. In terms of, you referenced the scheduling in Calistoga, are there not summer hours planned for this coming year where their Friday and Saturdays run late?
Correct. So this would be at least this would be the first move to go to Friday and Saturdays, these 2 additional hours. So just to 9 p.m. In kind of talking with the Visitors Bureau, we have decided, at least at this point, we're going to revisit this kind of monthly, that we are not going to do the second shuttle with the extended hours, and their price is reflecting that. For at least for the kind of the May timeframe. We're going to revisit it monthly because that's the simple enough change. When I change to fixed routes or something, there's a lot of rebidding and such. But in that case, we could do the extended hours with about a 4-week notice. So we'll just see what demand brings.
And you'll also continue, and pardon me if I missed this, the Sunday service during the summer?
There would not be Sunday service kind of as it stands right now. But again, that would be for May. We could revisit that for a June, July, or an August.
Okay, I would highly encourage you, and I can talk to the Visitor Bureau as well.
Yes.
At the very least, throw Sundays on there from the June through end of October timeframe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much. I just want to say, on behalf of NAPA, we appreciate the hybrid approach of keeping on demand and also providing fixed routes in those hot spots. And thank you, Rebecca, for the work you did in identifying those hot spots and trying to find a most efficient way to move forward and serve our riders. The question is, how are we notifying riders, potential riders, of these changes?
Sure. Well, I guess kind of the first thing was today to make sure we're kind of on the same page about this. And then with that being said, we have draft schedules ready to go to print. So there'll be physical schedules available. We'll be updating our GTFS feed, which is what shows up, say, in Google Maps or in Apple Maps when you're planning trips. And we will be doing physical signage on all of our buses, and then using our social media outlets to inform people of this upcoming change.
Very good. Do we ever use press releases, or is that not as applicable for this type of change?
Yeah, we did do that whenever we cut back the service, both in March and in April. So we should also do that to say we're reintroducing the service or portions of the service.
Excellent, great. And then when will we receive a report back on an update? Director Canning kind of brought this up to make sure that this is actually working as well as we hope it will.
Yeah, so let's think. So we've got, this is our April board meeting. We're starting this on May 9th. We won't have much data for the May board meeting. So we could report back in June kind of on where we stand. And then in July, we'd come back with what's our next interim phase for the start of school. Because depending on what the school district decides, that could very well influence what we're doing. We know we've always had a lot of high ridership, specifically to Napa High and to some of the other high schools in the area.
That sounds excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions by the board? If not,
Director Joseph.
Director Joseph? Oh, there you
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the reports. I'm curious about the time COVID hit. In American Canyon, we finally got our second bus for the.
Yes.
And so I'm, now I've kind of lost in my head what's going on. Can you give us a little recap? Did it work well? Did it get put on hold? Where are we at?
Yes, so we operated that second shuttle in American Canyon basically from January 1st through the end of March, just kind of when COVID hit of 2020. And that really did decrease the wait times in American Canyon. And we continue to see ridership growth, at least through around March 13th, right when the world exploded. So we would look at bringing back that second shuttle. I think what would probably be the driver for that is one, wait times, and two, if with the first shuttle that we're operating, if we got above 4 passengers per revenue hour. And you're about at 3.2 or so now at the end of March, and we'll relook at that. But I think that's definitely the goal would be, as demand increases, to get a second shuttle back in American Canyon again.
And then that kind of explains why we had such a dramatic drop, because we had 2 buses in the good times compared to 1 bus in bad. Okay, great. Thank you.
With a lot of that in American Canyon, we really appreciate it. Thank you to Director Joseph's point.
Yeah, we're going to get back to those good times, aren't we? So. Rebecca, thank you. I don't see any other questions by the board, so I'd like to see if we have any public comment on this.
We do have public comment from Justin Hull. We will allow him to speak. Just one moment.
Thank you.
If I hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Justin.
So how long we gonna be going back to weekday? I doing 11 north and 11 south. When we're going back?
Yes, that's looking like May 9th. So in a few weeks. And it always starts on a Sunday, just the way the schedules work.
Okay, it's gonna be like Monday to Friday.
Correct. It would be the Monday through Friday schedule from before. Basically, take a look at it because there are a few tweaks from, say, what existed in March of 2020 when you see the physical schedule, but basically the exact same time, the same time frames as before, Monday through Friday. Then we would operate a Saturday schedule just on Saturday, and then the normal Sunday schedule on the 10 and 11.
Okay, may I know why you guys sent me a two slideshow that I can take a look?
Oh, the slideshows? Yes, we could send those over to you.
I think that Claire or Kathy will send me that, or you can send me that. You know my email, so thank you.
Yes.
I am so waiting for that happening. Thank you.
I know you and a lot of other people, because I would say that was the number one complaint of the Saturday schedule was on the Route 11 going from American Canyon up to the city of Napa. On a Saturday schedule, you can't get there till around 9:50, and you can't get there earlier in the morning.
It'll be okay. I give you my email.
Oh, yes, we have it. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you so much. Doing a great job.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate your question. So the recommendation here is the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Board authorize the executive director to execute Amendment 4 to purchase Order 20-2013 with Double Map Inc. to provide an on-demand software to serve the city of Napa in the amount of $33,962.64 using Transportation Development Act funding. Do we have somebody who'd like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, Garcia.
Joseph, I'll make that second.
Thank you. And Laura, would you go ahead and go through the call, please?
Dan Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Aye.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Okay, so we're on to 9.6. We only have 2 more items to go. This is the Federal Service Transportation Reauthorization Project Request. And Kate Miller, you're going to be providing us a report.
I am. Thank you, Vice Chair Alicio. So item 9.6 requests the board's approval of Federal Surface Transportation Reauthorization Project priorities. At your March meeting, I mentioned that federal earmarks might be coming back. And since that time, both the Senate Public Works and Environmental Committee and House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee sent out project solicitations for projects to be included in the next Surface Transportation Authorization Bill. And that bill is currently being developed by Congress. The Environmental Public Works deadline came up very fast, and it did not give us time to vet the project priorities at all. And so we looked to our countywide transportation plan and projects that were ready based on the Environmental and Public Works criteria. And the one project that seemed to meet all of those criteria were the Napa Valley Forward State Route 29 roundabouts. So there was a little bit more time for the House and Transportation Infrastructure requests, but those deadlines also passed before another board meeting. And we did meet, though, with the Public Works directors to identify projects. And based on our conversations, both with them and with Congressman Thompson's office, 3 projects rose to the surface. Again, the Napa Valley Forward roundabouts, the Vine Fleet electrification, and the St. Helena to Yountville Vine Trail project. So our total requests was $15 million for the roundabouts. The total project cost on that is $20 million. The Vine Fleet electrification request was $7 million, and that total project cost was $9.3 million. And then the St. Helena to Yountville Vine Trail, this would be for the pre-construction of that project. We requested $3 million out of a total project cost of $3.5 million. The projects have all been included in the countywide transportation plan and in MTC's Federal Transportation Improvement Program. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And I see we have a question from Director Dunbar.
Yes, Kate, thank you for that very clear report. The three colors of money, I'll say, for these different projects, if one project doesn't either happen or not to the level of funding received, is the funding able to be transferred to one of the other projects, or is it very project specific?
It is very project specific. They will have the actual name of the project in the reauthorization bill. And while there was a time when I worked at MTC, I was actually able to do a funding exchange because it actually met the intent of the authorization language. I don't think we could actually change out a project. I would just add that members are only getting $25 million each. And Congressman Thompson's district, as you know, is pretty vast. And there's been a lot of competition and submittals. So I'll be happy if any of our projects get funded in the authorization legislation.
And a quick follow-up on the Highway 29 roundabout specifically. Do you have any sense of, so there are kind of three projects within one header. If one or two, but not all three, happen, can within that one overall project, could the allocations be kind of managed so that if, say, the furthest north roundabout were to be designed, constructed, and evaluated for success before the other projects, or how could those relate to each other, or they all need to work in conjunction?
Well, clearly, if we had three roundabouts going all at the same time, you know, the improvements would be very obvious very quickly. But I think that the disruption from construction would be such that it may not be ideal to construct them all at once. And I don't think we're going to have the resources to construct them all at once. I did put in the application that the project's scalable and that each roundabout is roughly $6 million. So, I mean, I wish I had sort of a crystal ball to be more definitive about that.
And it sounds like, thank you. It sounds like if we do in fact get any money for that, the amount of money is going to dictate the scope of work, because it may not include enough for multiple.
If I was a betting person, I would say that's exactly right. We're not going to get all of it. But I think, you know, right now we have almost as much for one. So we will continue to work with MTC staff on that. And then we'll have to decide which projects moving forward. I did mention in the MTC commission report that MTC did award a $1.5 million contract to GHD for all of the pre-construction and also some of the engineering work during construction. And Madison, I know you didn't mention it by name, is actually included in that. So we should have some preliminary engineering concepts on that intersection pretty soon. That will give us a lot more information about, you know, what we'll need moving forward.
Yeah, at least we're in the discussion, which is a very positive thing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Dunbar and Director Miller. Are there any other questions on the board, from the board? If not, let's see if there's any public comment or questions.
There are none.
Okay, very good. So this is an action item. So we will need somebody to move to approve the recommendation.
So moved by Dunbar.
Yeah.
Second, Garcia.
Kraus.
Okay, Director Garcia, sorry. Get a second on that one. And please go ahead and go through roll call.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. We're now on to 9.7, Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021 Regional Transportation Improvement Program Funds. And Director Miller, you're going to provide a staff report on this?
I am. Thank you. So item 9.7, request board approval of resolution 2113, programming $777,652 in CRISA Regional Transportation Improvement Program funds to the Sosco Junction project, of which 5% would go towards planning, programming, and monitoring. The CRISA funds, as you recall, gave us a lot of transit funds, and it has not given us as much on the highway side. Still, the Bay Area received $64 million, and it was distributed by RTIP, or a portion of it was distributed by RTIP funds, RTIP formula. Staff is recommending using the roughly $778,000 for Sosco Junction. Even though the project is fully funded, this would backfill a portion of the $3.7 million in developer fees that the county has committed to the project. And this is because those developer fees may not come to fruition until after the project has been completed. So we wanted to have a backup to backfill the subset of those funds. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Trying to get my screen to open back up. I can't see if there are any questions on the board. Okay, I see Director Dorman. There we go. Now I'm opening up. Okay, Director Dorman.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Director Miller. So 778,000, project fully funded. So our concern is the county has committed to 3.7. They may not be able to find all of that during the pendency of the project. And so we want to use the 778 and then get reimbursed at some future time from the county.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Very good.
Thank you, Dr. Dorman. And Director Joseph.
Well, two things. Number one, I anything that moves this project forward, I'm supportive of. And good, bad, or otherwise, we may find more cost overruns. And so that $750,000 could come in handy no matter what. But the follow-up question to Director Dorman's comment was, when the county reimburses us that $750,000, and assuming everything else is consistent with our estimates, is that money freed up that can be used for something else? And what might that something else be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it will depend on which developer fee moves forward and the criteria associated with that particular fee, but it would probably be able to be used on airport or somewhere near that vicinity. And then, you know, in all likelihood, the reality is with developer fees, as you well know, in American Canyon, is that it may not even come in some, you know, time that's useful to us at all. So while we hope that we'd be able to get that, you know, backfill some other project with that, there is no guarantee.
Okay, thank you very much. And Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you. That seems like a good opportunity to me. I was just wondering, is there a time frame for which these funds need to be spent?
Yes, that was the other issue is that like the other funds and the CRISA funds, they have to be spent within, I believe, I want to say within the next or committed within the next year. And the timeline to commit them was actually this month. So we already told MTC that this is what we were planning and that we would be going to the board. And that's how quickly they have to move. So we can't, like for instance, delay how we're going to decide to use them. We need to tell them that now. The actual timeline to use them, I believe we have a year.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comments or questions?
We do not.
Okay, then if we have no more questions by our board, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I quickly second the motion urgently.
Yes.
That's great. Did you get that, Laura?
Who made the motion?
Joseph jumped out ahead because he's a big Sosco fan.
Yes.
And
Dunbar.
Dunbar second.
Got it. Thank you.
It's pinch hitting if you need a third. And so then can you please go ahead and then go through roll call?
Young Garcia.
Yes.
Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Chris Canning.
Yes.
Gary Kraus.
Yes.
Liz Alessio.
Yes.
Scott Sedgley.
Yes.
Belia Ramos.
Yes.
Paul Doring.
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth.
Yes.
Carrie Dorman.
Yes.
And John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Fantastic. Okay, we're on to 9.8, federal and state legislative update. And this is going to be provided by Director Miller again.
Great, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Alicio. So on the federal side, the Biden administration, as you all know, released the American Jobs Plan on March 31st. It's an 8-year plan that includes $2 trillion for improving and rehabilitating the nation's infrastructure. Within that $2 trillion, there's about $625 billion for surface transportation and transit and electric vehicles and a number of other things, including ports. So we will keep our fingers crossed that that moves. I think it's going to be important, especially there's a lot of money in there for bridges. And I know the county has a lot of bridges that could use some work right now. So on the state side, the California State Transportation Agency, or CalSTA, released its draft climate action plan for transportation. The purpose of the plan is to align the state's infrastructure spending with the state's climate change initiatives, but also the state's health and equity objectives. The plan focuses on a number of existing funding programs and proposes changes that would reduce mobile emissions, many of which are focused on freight movement and corridor improvements. During a recent workshop and recently exhibited by Caltrans and projects that we had requested their support for federal earmarks, highway capacity projects will not receive departmental support or be a state funding priority in the future under this plan. So today, board action requests would be the California Transit Association has requested an $80 million budget set aside from the hybrid and zero emission truck and bus voucher incentive program. These are funds that we rely heavily on to electrify our fleet, and staff is recommending that the board support that effort. It's a budget line item. And I'm happy to stop at each one, or do you want me to just go ahead and give you an overview of each of the bills that you're going to be acting on today?
I think an overview would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so the first item is that $80 million budget line item. The second item is AB 43, and Director Garcia already mentioned this is Friedman bill. It would modify the 85th percentile traffic survey approach to setting local speed limits and allow cities to lower speeds and require surveyors to include other factors such as evaluating the local presence of seniors, children, and people with disabilities. This is consistent with the countywide transportation plan Vision Zero safety objectives that you have approved, and staff is recommending the board support this bill. AB 550, this is a CHU bill that I mentioned as part of the MTC Commissioner report. Oh no, sorry, this is a different bill. I take that back. This would direct Cal SDA to create a pilot program that would use automated speed enforcement technologies, and staff recommends that the board support this bill. AB 629 is a bill that was mentioned in the MTC Commissioner report, and it requires MTC and Bay Area transit operators to work cooperatively to improve the regional transit network. Most of the elements of the bill are already being completed by MTC and the region's transit operators. And for that reason, staff recommends that the board just take a watch position on this bill. And SB 674, Durazo, this bill would create the California Jobs Act of 2021 to encourage the creation of transportation and manufacturing jobs. It also alters procurement rules affecting public transportation agencies that would include certain requirements to incentivize job creation. Some of those requirements would conflict with the federal procurement regulations. Staff is recommending the board take a watch position on this bill. And that concludes my report. So there's 5 actions that we're requesting the board to make.
Okay, so there's 5. Very good. And do we have any questions on the board? Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the recommended action?
That motion to approve it, if there's no objection to any of the bills as they were presented.
I'll second it
And
as a package.
Liz, if I could ask a question, I'm sorry. Kate, I know we're in the middle of committee hearings right now. Are any of these recommendations going to need potential revision if a committee action changes the content of these? Do you know?
You know, I know there's probably going to be some changes to AB 629, but I just don't know what they are. We're all sort of, anxiously waiting to see. I will bring back, if there are any changes that are substantive, and I think that the board would want to change their position on, I will bring it back to you.
And if there's urgency before our next meeting, you would just contact us to potentially change a position?
I think I would have to do, we'd have to have a special meeting to do that.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion by Director Garcia and a second by Director Joseph. If there are no other questions, Laura, would you go ahead and go through roll call?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman, and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Okay. Any future agenda items? I don't see any. Okay, very good. So then on our favorite agenda item, number 11 is adjournment. The approval of our next regular meeting will be May 19th, 2021. And meeting is adjourned at 3:05. Thank you very much, everybody, for your patience and support.
Great job, Liz.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks.